What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. That your day is going absolutely fantastic. Now, it's still a while until the college football fall season is actually here, but of course, spring practices are now over, so I want to take another look at Texas A&M before the players do end up reporting later on in the summer for the fall season. But Texas A&M in 2021 really have a reason to be excited. They're coming off a great 9-1 sort of breakthrough year, and Fisher's staff has signed 3 consecutive recruiting classes that have ranked in the top 7 nationally. The Aggies overall are a very deep team, experienced, extremely talented, but in my opinion, there's still a lot of big questions, some answers that the Aggies need to find come later on this year. But yeah, so today we're just going to be going over some of the top questions, ideas surrounding the Aggies. So let's kick it off with what I think is obviously the top storyline of the year, which is what are the Aggies going to do at the quarterback position? Now, obviously, Jimbo Fisher, this offense, need to find a new quarterback to fill the big shoes of Kellen Mond. But the Aggies have one of the most interesting quarterback battles in really the entire country. And I've spoken about this battle after I covered the spring game, and I think a couple of other times as well. In my opinion, I'm just an outsider. I'm not an Aggies fan, but myself looking in, I think King is probably your guy to start the year. He's more of a dynamic guy, a dual threat quarterback, which allows him to provide a little something extra than Zach Calzada, who we'll talk about in just a second. We'll also talk about some of these sort of issues that the Aggies might have on their offensive line. And I think that, as we'll again talk about in just a second, those legs might take some pressure off this new offensive line. But in terms of the spring game, now I know it's just the spring game. We can't look too much into it, but the guys looked really similar. King and Calzada both threw a touchdown apiece, both threw 1 interception as well, roughly completed 50% of their passes. Now, on the flip side of this, I think when you look at a guy like Zach Calzada, though, I think he fits the Aggies scheme better in the long run. He's got a flashy arm. He's a little bit inaccurate at times, but I think when you look at the way that Jimbo Fisher likes to run this offense, maybe in the long run, Zach Calzada is that guy. With that being said, I still think King is the day one. Now, sort of sticking along the same side of a quarterback, it's not quite about the quarterbacks, but I think just because you have a new offensive line and a new QB1, the receiving core is something that the Aggies really have to be able to establish this year. Again, I know it's the spring game, but in that game, the receivers dropped a combined 9 passes, which is obviously not a great sign. And actually, even dating back to just last year, they're so reliant on their other pass catchers. 3 of the top 4 pass catchers from last season were tight ends or running backs. I really, really think it's in the Aggies' best interest this year to be able to establish a real number 1 receiver, but a receiving core as a whole. Next up, sort of the breakout player that I see coming up for the Aggies. Again, they are essentially replacing their entire offensive line. I think it's like only one guy who's returning. So in my opinion, the most likely position for a breakout player to come would be on that O-line. And I also think that's something that the Aggies really, really need as well. Now, bear with me if I butcher this name from an outsider looking in. It's a very tough name to pronounce, but I'm a big fan of Aki Agunbi. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But from everything that I've seen, he shed a bunch of weight this offseason. Also an improved pass protector as well. He improved that over the offseason. We saw that a little bit in the spring game. According to 24/7 Sports, he's a former 4-star, ranked as the nation's 9th best offensive guard in the recruiting class of 2021. He's got good mobility for an offensive lineman and obviously good size at 6'4". Now, the A&M website, I think, has him listed at like 305, but again, I think he shed a little bit of weight, so that number might be a little bit lower. But yeah, the Aggies definitely need somebody to be a breakthrough guy on that offensive line. I think that Aki could definitely be that guy. Next up, freshman impacts. Now, when I watched this spring game, there were 2 guys that really stood out to me in the A&M backfield, both freshmen, and both actually guys that had covered their recruitment before they actually committed to Texas A&M. You got Tariq Chappelle, who was a former 3-star signing, and then Deuce Harmon, the former nation's 15th best corner and a 4-star signing in the class of 2021. Both according to 24/7 Sports. What I really like about both of these guys, they're really, really good at being able to move laterally. They're both quick, both very physical. They got great recovery speed. They both play with their hands. 2 guys that I really like watching in high school and so far from what I've seen from them at the collegiate level. Now, A&M's defense is their strong suit. I don't think anybody's arguing that. So I don't know how much playing time they're necessarily going to get from the get-go, but I think throughout the season we could be seeing them a bunch. But definitely, 2-3 years down the line as well, I think these guys are big parts of the future for Texas A&M and what they're trying to do defensively. And then the final point, this is really their biggest concern. It's the offensive line. Texas A&M only returns one starter from that offensive line, and it's a player moving to a new position, so not some great signs there. It's Kenyon Green, consensus All-American, moved from guard to left tackle in the offseason, which is not a bad move for him. I don't think it's going to be a bad move for the Aggies either. It helps him in terms of what he's trying to do for the NFL draft. Because he is a great prospect. He's a phenomenal player. But that being said, the Aggies definitely have a lot of work to do on that line. Now, you have a Tennessee transfer in Jameer Johnson coming in, perhaps the most ready guy to just step in and start right away. But the offensive line does have some freshmen and mostly consists of sophomores and juniors overall. So you're not getting a lot of experience on that line. Now, going back to my earlier points, this is where I think that King really comes in clutch. You got an offensive line with no experience, but you have an ability to start a dual threat quarterback, a guy who can use his legs. And when you can use your legs and get out of the pocket, you're avoiding potentially some of the issues that you have with maybe some lost blockers on that line. And you have the ability to move out of the pocket and be mobile, which I think is definitely something that would be able to take some pressure off this offensive line, at least until they get some experience under them. And maybe if Texas A&M for some reason isn't winning games, then you look at a guy like Zach Calzada. But I definitely think, given the circumstances of the offensive line, just, a whole bunch of things up in the air, particularly on offense, I think King is definitely the safest guy. But that being said, I think that the Aggies are in for a tremendous, tremendous year. As I was sort of saying before, I think if you go King or Calzada, you're getting a winning quarterback with either one of those guys. If they can figure out the receivers, I think you're perfect on offense. I think you got a tough schedule in the SEC, some big games, but I definitely think they can get the job done. And then you're returning pretty much your entire defense, which was the biggest part for Texas A&M. So I think they're in a perfect and prime spot to potentially get to the playoffs last year. Obviously, we know that even with 9-1, they were the first team out. Probably should have got in over Notre Dame, but I don't want to sort of get into that. But yeah, if you guys did enjoy today's video, or you have thoughts on anything that I've really talked about today, definitely make sure to leave that down in the comment section below. If you're a college football fan in general and you have sort of another team or topic that you want to see me cover, definitely make sure to let me know that down in the comment section below as well. But it would do me a huge favor if you guys did enjoy the video, if you could just smash that thumbs up button and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to push for 10,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. Hopefully we can do it. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.